Welcome to For the Love of Licking County, a podcast where we bring you everything on leadership, entrepreneurship, and community impact. Presented by the Licking County Chamber of Commerce. I am your host, Jamie Wright of Wright Dauble Insurance, and we are coming to you from right here in Newark, Ohio.
Whether you're a job seeker or a business with staffing needs, Ohio Means Jobs Licking County is here for you. Our center is fully equipped and expertly staffed to help you with your employment and workforce needs. Stop in and see us at 998 East Main Street in Newark or call us at 740-670-8700.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Wing Max Smith & Bang DDS, where they are always accepting new patients. Voted Best Dentist in Licking County 2020. Hello, and welcome to For the Love of Licking County. I am super excited to be here today. And if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. We're excited to have you. I have a treat today. I do have with me the CEO of RevLocal, Mr. Marc Hawk. Welcome.
Good morning, Jamie. It's great to be here.
Yay! I'm so happy. And admittedly, I said that I was a little bit nervous. And then I just kind of associated nerves and excitement are often the same feeling or from the same family. So maybe I'm more excited, which this show might be a little selfish, like I had mentioned, because I do have some questions that I personally would like for you to answer. So I do know that everybody's going to be able to take something away from the show today, for sure. So thank you so much for being here. I am extremely humbled that you're here today. So I appreciate the opportunity. I do want to start with your bio because I think it's, and I'll explain why, but I think it's important to read your bio. So if I may, before becoming CEO, Marc was the president of RevLocal since its inception in the fall of 2010. He attended Notre Dame with the dream of becoming the next Heisman Trophy winner, but somehow graduated in 1992 with a degree in accounting. This led him to start his professional career at Ernst & Young. Following this, he had a successful 10-year stint as a commercial loan officer and senior vice president of commercial lending at Park National Bank. With the desire to feed his entrepreneurial spirit, he took over leadership of related entities Copper.net and ECR Computers in 2004. While leading RevLocal, Marc spends his free time with his family, church, and community. He is a father of 5 children with his wife of nearly 20 years, Tanya. Marc serves his community as a founding board member and current board president of St. Gabriel Radio, a member of Rotary, past president of the local chapter of Legatus, and a former member of the board for the Community Foundation of Knox County, Ohio. Wow. I mean, that's impressive. But I want to circle back to, obviously, the sentence about the Heisman Trophy winner, and you somehow graduated with an accounting degree. And I really love this because it really speaks to your leadership style and your humanity. And it's fun, right? And anytime that I have been involved in a team or had an opportunity to lead, I often say, hey, this needs to be fun. And I don't mean like we're out here jumping on bounce houses, right? And eating candy all day. I mean, this is supposed to be enjoyable for your life and enjoyable for your family. And I think that just kind of gets everybody ready to listen to you, right?
Well, Jamie, one of my favorite phrases is we're not saving lives here. Now, there are some people who have a job or a career where that is their job. Certainly in the last 12 months, it's not something we joke about because a lot of people have. But in my career in business, we're not saving lives here. Calm down.
Yeah.
Enjoy. Have fun. Even I think part of one of the weaknesses I think some of us have in a achieving culture is to take ourselves way too seriously and not realize this is a journey. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I like to remember is the joy is in the journey, not the destination. Mm-hmm. And people get caught up in what they're going to achieve and what the results in the finish line. But often the joy is the struggle.
Yeah.
The obstacles, the overcoming of the obstacles, the fear of what's going to come. And so if you have an attitude going into that, hey, this is going to be fun. Let's tackle it together. Mm-hmm. The same kind of thing that I had when I went off to Notre Dame after having tore both knees out. There was no chance I was going to be a Heisman winner. That dream actually died before I got there on the football field in Danville, which was a small school just like Newark Catholic is here where my son went to school. So, at Notre Dame, I had a chance to watch all the guys and be a manager and be close to those people. And I also realized something being a manager on the football team that won the national title. Mm-hmm. the year before I got there. So we were number 2 when I was there. I transferred in my sophomore year. And so when I got there, I realized these guys are just like me. They're just faster, stronger, bigger. I could never play with them, but in the conversations in the locker room, same conversations I had in high school. I used to joke about it. These guys were Heisman guys, and they would be having conversations like, man, he's hard to block. Same stuff we used to say. And so the reality of often the way people perceive things versus the way people really are, and it really is about that humanity, like you said, the vulnerability to be real.
Yes.
It's one of the things that we try to build our businesses on, is make sure everyone realizes we need to be real.
Yeah. And you just mentioned vulnerability, which I think is extremely important in leadership too, because I think it's important to know people's soft spots, right? And to be able to realize their point of reference or where they're coming from. That takes a great deal of vulnerability for you to open up and say that, and then say, okay, now I understand how you function. Let's move on. Let's build this team knowing these things about everybody. So vulnerability is a huge piece, which can oftentimes be seen as a weakness.
Well, I was going to say, I think a lot of people try to hide any weakness, and the leaders do the same thing. So if you have a culture where everybody knows, don't let them see us sweat, and that's something that's even been taught.
Yeah.
Versus having an attitude that we all have our own struggles. We all have personal things that are difficult. And so when you're really getting under the hood of what enables somebody to thrive or not thrive, you have to understand what is the person dealing with is just as important on the list of things of what their skills are and how they need to be led or challenged. But I think cultures that are built on trying to, as we like to say in our business, we want to build each other up on our strengths, not trying to take advantage of weaknesses.
Right.
But that requires a willingness to admit where your weakness is, and a willingness to accept help to try to build through those. Or if you're in a tough situation personally, accepting help where somebody can walk alongside you, feel your pain with you, and then give you a hand up.
Yep.
And if you have a culture that does that, and if we lead that way, then we can get to places where we would never have gone. And we can also build people that we would have never been able to retain if we didn't go to the place where they were having the most struggle under the hood.
Yeah, so, I love that. I love that. And that's a big one to unpack, I think, too, for a lot of businesses and their, team members or employees. It's really important, I think, to kind of to interject that vulnerability piece for sure.
But Jamie, most people like to say keep personal and business separate. We like to believe in an integrated life.
Yeah.
But what that means is you have to be tolerant of being very different than the person you're leading, and not necessarily coming with a judgment attitude like, well, you need to look at the world the way I look at it, and if you don't, you can't be on my team. That's the control of a non-vulnerable, controlling type leader. And we need to have a culture that says, we're going to be who we are, and I'm not going to apologize for who we are individually, but at the same time, we're going to accept other people where they are. So there's a tolerance and a love for people that has to come through, I think, in authentic, vulnerable leadership, which goes back to being genuine and authentic and realizing, and for a lot of our young folks, because we have a culture that is very young, it's kind of awkward for them because they may not have a family that believe that. They may not have been had any teaching in college that this is what it's going to be like. And it may be a little countercultural, but I think it's at the root of having people thrive.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much, which kind of leads to my next point. I do want to let everybody know how I came to know you. And you might not remember this, but I was in the community leadership class last year, and I was in Team Bio, the business and industry group, and we wanted you to be a speaker on our panel for our presentation day. And this is the part that really got me about who you were originally when I originally met you. But Leslie got a hold of me because you called her and said, hey, I'm running a little bit late. You need to let them know. You were traveling in just to come and talk on our panel. And I thought that was super cool. And then obviously when you came on, it was like we were all in awe of like the whole panel and everything that you guys had to give to us that day, which I think was very rich in knowledge. And we loved it, and everybody complimented us. So kudos to you. That's just a little shout out to you. But then So RevLocal cares, and you when you guys chose, so I'm the founder and president of Starfish Assignment Licking County, and you guys chose us, and you called me on my cell phone from yours. And I just was, you might remember, I was like high pitched and I cried a little bit and I was super excited. But I thought that really just spoke to who you were as a leader. And it was really important for you as the CEO to call and say, hey, we really want to give you this opportunity, which obviously I cried about. So thank you for that. And then most recently, you were on a Zoom call with Aaron for the local leaders, and the topic was retaining it was young professionals in the pandemic and kind of what you guys have had to do to adapt. And that's where I want to dig into the bones of today, because you guys both, and I wrote these notes down, so forgive me if they're not 100% correct, but I wanted you to unpack on this because it's so good, you guys. I wrote these down. Number 1, press pause. Don't react, respond. And you told this story about vacation, and I'll let you talk about that. 2, get your mind right. 3, step up. 4, be ready to adjust and adapt. 5, make a difference. 6, build skill. So talk to us about those 6 principles and where they came from and how we can facilitate those.
Well, thank you, Jamie. And the excitement I had, when you were talking about those stories of Starfish Assignment is, it went the other way. Like, there is someone here who's got enough passion to do something to make a difference. And so I think if we're going to be a community that grows and gets better, it's about people having passion and supporting each other. And so you're doing all the hard work. It was easy for us to take the support of our employees and provide that to you so that you could do what you want to do. So the thanks goes to you. So thank you for that. And I was really excited to hear about it because you shared it at Rotary.
Yeah.
And actually, I missed that Rotary. People told me that you need to know about this. And so thanks to Tony Adams at State Farm. So Tony is one of the ones who said, Mark, you want to hear about that. And so I really appreciated that. And that's where I really got excited about it. But when you think about what Aaron and I talked about, we had to learn how to lead in a time that we've never been through. So all of us are going through COVID in a very, the disruption and the suddenness and the uncertainty and the fear, it just can paralyze you.
Yeah.
But what was exciting for us and fortunate for us is 1 month previous, which would have been the first week of February. This happened in March 13th. We sent everyone home.
Yeah.
So we're all coming up on that anniversary this next 2 weeks, depending upon how quick people were to send them home. Ours was March 13th. We had Tim Kite from Focus 3. And Tim Kite is he's the one who has propagated E plus R equals O. I first learned about it because he did it at Ohio State with the football team. And so being a sports nut like I am, the Ohio State players in Urban had wristbands, E plus R equals O, and they're teaching all the athletes about what to do when an event happens. Because E is an event. O is an outcome. But you can't control the event, you can't control the outcome, but you can control your response. And so the event for us wasn't, a fumble or losing a game or having somebody get hurt like the Buckeyes had to deal with, but it was COVID. It was challenges that happened every single month. It was what are we supposed to do? And so what he teaches is the R factor, is improving your response. And the greater the event, the more important the response is. The bigger the E, the bigger the R has to be. And so we really needed a framework to really work with our people and to calm them down. And the first R factor, pressing pause, is really the most important thing, because we often get so worked up we can't even think. We can't even talk about what it's going to be. So once you press pause, then you got to remind yourself, get your mind right. So how do you get your mind right? For some people, their mind immediately goes negative to what's going to happen and what's going to go wrong. But if you practice it and train, and we often say, your will is a skill. Your will is a skill. Many people don't believe that. They think, well, this is how I'm wired. Just let me be me.
Yeah.
I get worked up and that's who I am. Well, we believe the will to deal with pressure, to deal with difficulty, to be a leader, or to get out and knock on doors in the middle of a pandemic like our salespeople do around the country, has to do with what they have been able to be trained to do. And they've built that skill to overcome. And this comes from my training. I knocked on doors when I was in college. My brother and I knocked on doors 6 days a week for 12 weeks, 70 hours a week in another town. So when I was a junior in college, I took the challenge. I had an internship at Ernst & Young accounting firm and decided to not do that because my brother challenged me to build a skill that I wouldn't get through college.
Just based on a challenge from your brother.
Yep.
That's
and
awesome.
He had that little way of saying, you can't do it as good as I do. Of course, that competitive juice in me said, all right, I'm going to prove him wrong.
Right.
And so what I learned in that is there was a skill that I didn't have, which was controlling my emotions, which was controlling how to respond and how to keep going. And it has served me for the last 25 years in my career, but I had to do it through the fire of knocking on doors every day, getting the door slammed in your face. My goal would be to have 3 or 5 people sit down with me after 10 to 12 hours.
Wow.
And so you really learn that there's going to be, and you have to leave behind what just happened. The next person doesn't know what just happened. It's the whole sales mindset. But that's the same thing that happens in the R factor. Press pause, get your mind right, and step up. What am I going to do next? Next house. Don't think, just work. Don't think, just work. I love my job. I love my job. I love my job. So there's skills in there that are self-talk, that are managing your mindset.
That's huge.
And so the same thing happens, I believe, in a moment like or a period like we've gone through, is we ask ourselves every month, what is our mindset and what should it be? Because it shifted.
Oh, yeah.
It was looking good for a while. I mean, we literally weren't sure what was going to happen for 2 months, and then we started to come out of it, and then it started to get the blahs. And so we were always, I think the question that all of us as professionals need to ask, and especially young professionals, is how do you develop the ability to thrive in moments of difficulty and challenge? When the E's come, they're going to come.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to come personally. They're going to come professionally, and some of them, there's not a thing you can do about it. And I think working on that R factor and building skill as you work through those, you gave the list of those, and I know the first 3 or 4, but I don't always know. But building skill, you're really getting to the point. And these are things that Tim Kite teaches. Tim Kite was at our company meeting in February and taught our entire company about the R factor. And so we were able to draw on that. We were able to get Tim back on and to have him come and do some videos and just keep helping us to build that skill as a group, as a company of 400 people. So we really, I think it really helped us sustain and thrive and grow last year and continue to kick off this year with, hey, we've now added skills. Because what happened for RevLocal was we needed to add skills. We had 200 salespeople that all went door to door. They were ground troops.
Wow.
And now all of a sudden they're stuck at home.
Yeah. Well, and that's important too. When you're talking about building skill, it's not just professional workplace skill. I think it's a lot of personal development too. I mean, you're building your personal skills. You're making that whole, being comfortable with being uncomfortable piece too. I think that has a lot to do with building skill. And you can read books and you can listen to podcasts that are really pragmatic for your life too, but you have to understand, like, this is you digging in deep to yourself to be able to come to work every day and say, I love my job. I love what I do because I feel so fulfilled in that piece. So I love that whole thing. I have gone to this list more times than not since I heard you say it.
Well, one of the things we had to do, Jamie, I never forget this. So one of the great blessings I have is my oldest son, who's 32 now. Long story, but John's 32. I'm not that old, but he was adopted when he was an 10-year-old. So now he's a regional sales manager, and he visited me in the middle of, and he said, how do you guys have it all figured out? Because we do videos every week and we try to share a message. And then I started talking to him about it, and he said, now having a conversation, what appears to be the case is not really the case.
Right.
Is you're still trying to figure it out all the time. And that makes me feel so much more comfortable. And so that's one of the realities of what can appear, the perception that people can have is that you have had success, you've been blessed, things have gone your way, you've worked hard, but You don't know around the next corner if you're a leader. If you're running a business, you have this fear every day when you wake up is what's the train that's coming that I don't see?
Yep.
And the reality of it is when COVID hit, I was a little bit stressed internally, like I'm not good at getting on. You want me to do a video every week? I've never done that. I don't like listening to myself, let alone having people listen to me. But then practicing it, revisiting it, working with others around, like how do we tell a concise, succinct, compelling message that can motivate and inspire our people and enable us to be successful? That's my job. I got to get good at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's an ongoing process.
I think it is for everybody though too. And we look at ourselves so much differently than everybody else looks at us. You know, I think you're a fantastic speaker, obviously. And I know a lot of people agree with that. But we do look at ourselves in a whole different light too. We put a lot of pressure and we need more grace, right? And so, you know, I wake up every day praying like, thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to trust you more. I know today's going to be one of those days. So that is really important. And with that too, I do want to ask you, so today's topic is what makes a great leader? And you did say, and I love this too, and I really want you to unpack this. Leaders are believers. So dive into that with us and kind of answer that question of what do you think makes a great leader?
Well, one of the things we talk about this all the time because our company has grown a lot in 10 years, you know, and so we have to develop leaders. We have to get good at it, and I have to develop my leadership. And I think leaders are believers is a great overarching statement to begin with, because the question is, do you believe in yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in people?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily where they are today, but where they can be. And do you believe in your ability to help them get there?
Mm-hmm.
That's your job. And the other thing I would say is believers in the process and the patience. And one of the things that Aaron Boggs is our president, you mentioned Aaron earlier, and you know, one of the things he always says, you always have to keep updating your profile. And if you're a parent, you know that the freshman is not the same person that the senior person is. And then I've seen it happen to my kids where all of a sudden I wake up, I'm like, oh my gosh, they feel like a peer. You know, that's the way my son is now. Like I'm learning from him instead of me teaching him all the time. So, but it's hard. Some people have a hard time changing the profile and changing how they believe in people and what's possible for people. And then asking yourselves, what responsibility do I have? Because I think it comes back to the honesty that I have a responsibility here to help a person grow. Because we tend to be pointing at people instead of working with them and saying, all right, here's what we have to work on together. And so I think having a humble, hungry, smart attitude, that's how it's one of the things we lean on. And it's actually the elements of an ideal team player that Pat Lencioni in his book, Ideal Team Player, talks about. We lean on that a lot to say, are we being humble as a leader, that there are things I can do? I didn't help you. So you may not have had a good period or had a mistake happen. It was on my fault. It's my fault. Do you have leaders that are willing to admit that they didn't actually teach you? They didn't actually show you. And so they're calling you out as a person when nobody even told you. Like your kids can say, you didn't tell me not to do that.
Right.
And so we have to have the humility to say, you know, let's have an honest conversation about the fact that I believe that I could have been wrong. And I believe that there is a way. And I think that humility has to be there. And then certainly unpacking that with your people to make sure that they have those elements. Are they being hungry enough? Humble, hungry, smart. Are they also energized by, you know, the challenge that it is for them to grow? Or are they sitting back waiting on you to do it? And I think it goes both ways. And so having that collaborative approach, and in our culture, we have 3 values that we tried. And this is really after 5 to 7 years of growing, we said, all right, we had aspirational values that look like something you get out of a book: be accountable, be empowered, be, you know, create value, all those things. And we said, wait a second, what do our customers say about us? Why do they stay here? Why is it that you stay here working with other people? What do you like about the culture? Because culture means how do you behave towards each other? There are lots of different cultures, right? There's American culture. There's big corporate cultures that people lament. But what about this culture as it is today, which it is dynamic and will keep changing? And so we defined it off of the words they came up with. And the phrases were be real.
Be real, like that.
And that is being genuine and authentic. and transparent,
Mm-hmm.
but also doing the right thing every time,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing the right thing as a leader is treating people with respect, treating people with honesty. And we often say people have a hard time being honest, have a hard time telling them the hard truth. So that's the be real piece. And then we go on into going beyond, which is scrappy. And the last one is help someone. Do you become a better version of yourself being selfish? No, you become a better version of yourself when you sacrifice comfort and convenience. So as a leader, it's really, you have power, you have control, but are you willing to sacrifice your comfort and convenience, be uncomfortable in order to serve others?
Mm-hmm.
And so the serving of others is not just colleagues, it's also clients. Sometimes it's hard to, just be understanding and patient with the client and try to dig a little deeper to see what their under the hood the problem is. It could be struggles they're having personally, not even your work.
Right.
And so those are 3 fundamental values that we try to lean on to help our people learn to lead. Because one of my goals as a leader is to have people around me that are as good or better than me.
Right.
So I want to have a team of CEOs. I don't want everyone leading to me. I want to lead leaders, not add followers.
Yep.
And so leadership to us is leading other people to lead, not adding a follower to follow what you're saying and feel controlled by you and, feel like you're criticizing or an avoiding or, a rescuing leader. There's always got to be the one who gets the credit, but actually leading other people up to shine.
Well, and I think too, when you have an opportunity to lead in your life, I think that you need to understand how to be a good follower first too. I think that that's really important. And then you touched on the authentic piece, and I think that that's so good and it's so true. And I've often said, and I'll say it a million other times, if you could bottle up your authenticity, and that's you as in generally speaking,
right,
people would buy it. I think people long for that, and it's really, really important to be able to, and even if you don't understand what that means in terms of relative to yourself, like you can see other people that you think are authentic or being authentic, and you can learn how to relate that to your life. Because I think that the one thing that we take away from college, right, is not every formula that we remember to test on. It's the ability to learn. And in order to survive, you have to be willing to adapt. And I think that's the one thing that college is, and that's my opinion. I mean, obviously there's a lot of other factors that are great about college, but that's the one thing that you would take away is just that ability to learn. And I think that's really important in leadership as well.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think that ability to learn and to accept the fact that people aren't always going to be the same as you. And if you live your life trying to get everyone around you to be just like you, instead of having that authenticity to take off your mask and let somebody see who you really are. I think that's the challenge of social pressures when you're young, is you tend to put on masks. And so I think one of the phrases I like to use with our folks is it's time to grow from an amateur to a pro.
Love that.
So what's professionalism look like? And what we're talking about to me is, and some people don't necessarily focus on trying to grow professionally. They want to be who they are. One of my favorite books that I lean on a lot is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And he talks about one of his habits that people have as professionals is the need to be me. It gives you an excuse to say, that's who I am. That's my personality. In other words, you all have to just deal with me being me.
Right.
Instead of saying, you know what, I can listen more. I can learn to be more patient. I can learn to help instead of just being self-focused, competitive jerk that Mark was when he was in high school. I often feel like, my brothers always told me that, like, you're so competitive that you come off as a jerk, but we know you, but nobody else is going to know that because you got to win. If it's chess, I'm like Michael Jordan when I was a kid. And so I tell people all the time, I work hard on not doing things outside of work that don't feed my competitiveness, because that just makes it worse.
That's true.
So that's a recent thing that I've learned. Like, don't go play golf, Mark, because you're gonna come home mad. And I shut off the Buckeyes when they're not having a good game because I'm getting so competitive. I'm like, just be at peace. You don't need to get that.
You're not the only one. And that brings up a good question. I think what you're speaking about requires a lot of emotional intelligence to go from where you were in high school, like you just described, to where you are now, that takes a lot of emotional intelligence. Was there like one kind of piece that really brought you to that moment for you where you're like looking in the mirror, like, okay, we got to make some changes?
Absolutely. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But the key to me is that the hardest thing as a human being is to see yourself the way other people see you.
Yes.
And if you just look in your mirror and keep asking yourself, how do you look different? It's not going to change. It's the same image.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put mirrors around you that come from the side and from behind, those are people that you work with that you give permission to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that's great.
So where I started at, I remember this reality of look for an ally. And the idea of an ally is not somebody that gives you power to overrun other people, but it's an ally who cares enough to tell you the truth, who cares enough to tell you when you're being ridiculous, when you're being overly competitive for me, or not listening well, or not giving people a chance to be who they are. And so what I've been blessed with is the more, and I've just recently added a couple executives that have lenses I've never seen before that are another mirror that can see things that we as a company are doing, or me as a leader, how I'm blocking things, because it's a never-ending dynamic reality. It never stops.
Yeah, we're human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. But I think that's the key is, do you have people in your life that you give permission to? Some people think, I got that friend, they always tell me the truth. But do they really?
Right.
And it really is a matter of, they may tell you about some things and you feel like they do, but there are other things you haven't given them permission to. So I've learned as a leader, especially when you have a role that people might think they can't tell you the truth, you really have to find people that have the courage and the professionalism to go to the point where they will tell you that.
That's so true.
What it is you can grow with.
That's so true. I love that. I guess I'd never thought about it in terms of like just many different mirrors, and obviously in relation to making those mirrors people for your team, if you will, right? To make you a great leader.
And Jamie Marshall Goldsmith talks about this in the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, that you can find out what they are, but most people can't change them. You can find out what your weaknesses are. You can find out what your habits are, but you're very unlikely to change them. And the only way that I've found that you can make a change is if you get people around you that you give permission to hold you accountable and to work with you. Because, for example, if you're the way that I speak sometimes is very convicted. It's one of my strengths becomes a weakness. Like, I make people say you're decisive. Like, you can look at information and make a decision and we can all buy and go. But sometimes it's so convicted, nobody gets the chance to put their hand up and say, whoa. Steve Jobs used to tell people, if you see something that you don't win the argument against me, you don't agree with me, and we go ahead and do it my way, and we fail, I'm going to fire you because you didn't have the courage to fight with me and believe what you believe and to fight to make it real, that I heard you well enough, to make that, to take your way. And I think that's the permission you have to give. Steve Jobs had to give permission to people to fight with him instead of saying, well, you're the boss, I don't want to lose my job. So I think it is on the leader, and no matter how small your team is or how big, it doesn't matter. It's your group, your family. People have to know that you have enough humility. And so what I've had to do, talking about this, is to tell people when I hire them, I'm going to sound like I'm so convicted that you can't argue with me. But ask people, if you're convicted, will I listen to you? But I may not hear you initially unless you're convicted enough. I don't necessarily like a lot of talk for the sake of talk or discuss for the sake of like, hey, what are all the, doesn't need to go around the horn all the way, because we can already see past that. But if you have an opposing view or an alternative view option, then please speak up. And I will give you that permission now to tell me, hey, slow down. I want you to hear this before we finalize this decision, or give me some, direction on something.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. And so from that, these are my selfish questions that I want to ask you. I'm interested in knowing, where does your confidence come from? And I think that that's important for people to hear from people in a leadership position, because people want somebody to look at, and they want somebody to look for when they are on a journey. So where does that confidence come from for you?
The first answer is my faith.
Mm-hmm.
The first answer is I know no matter what happens that I lean on my faith and my trust and knowledge that this isn't just about the result of what's happening here. So I don't get myself too wrapped up and worried about the negative consequences. I think confidence is when you doubt everything and you worry about the negative outcome instead of having a level of deep trust. So in my spirit, I have a level of deep trust that, the Lord that I had learned. And I'll tell you, I had a couple experiences in my life when I lost a best friend in 8th grade, when I tore out my knee as a freshman and my other knee as a senior and had everything that I ever dreamed of wiped away. That dream was the Heisman Trophy, by the way. That dream was actually playing for Ohio State. When I realized that wasn't the option, then I went to Notre Dame for the school. I'd probably go to Ohio State for the school these days because it's a different place. But when I think about those, that's where the confidence comes from, is I've been through the fire as a human being in my life. Different people have it happen to them at different times. I happen to be really young. And I realized when the worst happens, I can still get through it. So I don't really have a fear of failure as much because I know a failure is going to be a teacher for me. It's going to be what's going to lead me to something else. So if a door gets slammed, another one opens. You've heard that. I believe that in my core. If we fail after this many years on an idea, then we'll fail forward. I'm not going to fail backwards. I'm always going to lean forward. And I learned that because I had to. And I had a mother and a father who helped lead me to, where do you find peace? Where do you find the confidence to go through? So I think it's really something that has, for me, I've been lucky that it came from my life experiences. And then how I've learned in the relationship I've developed with God to help me realize that, and my father's getting old and I lost my mom to ALS, and seeing her go through that and walking through that journey with her and how she interpreted it and how she prepared for it well before that. And so I like to believe that what I'm going through in my life is preparing me for the thing that no one talks about. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
We don't know when.
Right.
We hope it's not an accident. We hope it's not quick and sudden.
Right.
But in reality, I watched my mom prepare and talk for years with me after having seen my friend pass so suddenly. It was so deeply emotional. And we've had some recent really sad situations with young people dying. It's the hardest thing. Yeah. But it's in those moments where you have the opportunity to decide how you're going to approach life. And so for me, that's where my confidence comes from. And I like to share that with other people to help them dig a little deeper to find out where that confidence is coming from. I don't like to press my faith upon them, but that's where mine comes from. And hopefully that can inspire other people to say, go find that, because that can give you the peace that you need to face the challenges and the struggles and the difficulties that marriage and family and jobs and job losses and sickness. It happens to everyone in their life, but some people don't know how to prepare for it or have the toolkit. Yeah. And I feel lucky because I got that toolkit presented to me and shared with me early in my life.
Amen. That's beautiful. And then my other question, this is my other selfish question, but so humility aside, okay, what do you think is your super strength?
Oh, so this is one of the things I love talking about.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I have done during COVID, because out of necessity, not because I'm smart, because I'm desperate, how do I help people? And one of the most recent ones that I have that I'll lead people to is called the Working Geniuses. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So Pat Lencioni.
Yeah.
You've heard me mention him a couple times. So for those of you who don't know, Pat Lencioni speaks, his most popular is the 5 dysfunctions of a team. A lot of people have heard that, and it is focused on building trust, having conflict, and building a culture that's highly functional, that's based on trust, and it's based on the ability to keep each other accountable, be committed to the result, and not have all this focusing on what I would call politics and bad culture. So he's got a foundation there. But his 6 working geniuses came about in the last 2 or 3 months, where after all these years, he realized that there are things that we do that give us great energy, things that we do that are competencies that we do because it's our job. And there are things that we have to do in our job that absolutely suck the life out of us. And so he put them into 6 categories. And the 6 categories are 6 geniuses. So what I love about this, and that really helped me, because my geniuses, for example, are more in the discernment, which is decision making, seeing information, coming up with what do you see and how do you conclude what you should do, and galvanizing, rallying people behind it to move towards it. But if I don't have around me people who have other geniuses, like wonder, they always are asking why, and they just can't get past something until they understand and they're thinking about how, and that's their first question. Or invention, what could we do? I don't spend time on the whiteboard like other people around me do. My brother, for example, who we're partners, he's a wonder invention guy. And if he's not doing that, he gets exhausted.
Yeah.
That's why he hired me. He
Yeah.
can't stand meetings. He can't stand galvanizing people, even though he'll do it. And he's been successful. So it's widget, wonder, invention, discern, galvanize, enable, and tenacity. So enable is helping other people get stuff done. And so you need those folks in a culture. And tenacity, those are I call them the GSD folks. Get stuff done, get stuff done,
right.
People. And so when you look at that, then you start to realize, well, wait a second, because people tend to say, if they're not like me, one of the things that is another life lesson I've learned is we tend to hire people in business, or if we're a hiring role, that are more like us. But what do we say about in our personal lives? What do people tend to do that choose a wife or a spouse? Opposites attract.
Absolutely.
Right? So why is that? Personally, we want somebody totally different than us. But professionally, we try to birds of a feather flock together. Yeah. We try to do that. When you start to realize, I need to find different geniuses. I need to make sure I've got good wonder in my group. So the chemistry of a team and understanding what the geniuses are and understanding what your own are, and not try to be something you're not. And because you will eventually become dissatisfied and unhappy in your job if you're being asked to do a bunch of tenacity things when actually you're a wanderer. And so we focus on trying to understand and frame what's really going on here. And that one really helped me understand what mine are, which is to be a decision maker, to take in information, understand patterns and push it. But it's also to draw on the people around me to say, hey, we need to solve a problem here. And I'm not really equipped to solve it. So instead of being the leader who has to solve it, why don't I bring in the people who can help me solve it, give them the baton and say, help me solve it, come up with something, and then I'll work with you and I'll help you discern which one of those makes sense.
Yeah, so drawing on everybody's strength.
And so I think it's so hard though in teams for people to recognize what their strengths are, because they need the mirror of someone to tell them, or an assessment helps.
Yeah.
Hey, you're actually good at this. And when we take those assessments, which we've had a lot of people do, they tend to be sometimes surprised. I didn't realize, well, but maybe that is why I don't like doing that part of my job. Because there are things that we don't love, we still have to do. And those are your working competencies. Like for me would be more along the lines of being tenacity and, being detail oriented, making sure stuff gets done. But that's not what I'd love to do. And that's not where I get most energized.
And it's funny too, because I love me a good assessment.
Yeah.
But some of them I'm like, really? That's me? Like, I don't think so, or I didn't know that. But then you get to read into it and you're like, that makes so much sense. Even if it's not in a workplace, but in a professional sense, or a personal sense, you're like, oh, that totally.
But Jamie, isn't it the core of that?
Yeah.
We as human beings want to be something we're not sometimes. Everybody wanted to be the quarterback, but somebody had to tell some of the linemen, you can't throw.
Right.
But guess what? Every time they had a chance after practice, they could give me that football. Let me show you how far I can throw.
Right.
I had a brother like that. He was the lineman, I was the quarterback. Well, he was a pitcher and I was a catcher, and I wasn't going to make myself a pitcher.
That's right.
So he had a good arm, but he wasn't going to be a quarterback. So, but it is that reality of how we see ourselves versus an assessment can help. Others can help you, because we really don't do a good job as human beings of seeing ourselves with authenticity.
Absolutely. That's so true. So 2 more small questions before we conclude today. But I think it's fun for everybody to know what your most favorite part of your job is.
Oh, wow. There's 2 things that I would say. One, I feel really fortunate and lucky that RevLocal, one, has had success and found a recipe for growth and being able to employ people and give people opportunity. But the first thing I would say, there's 2 things that I think about. The first is helping other people succeed. So what I've seen in my career is there's a lot of A players stuck in C situations. I learned this at Park National, actually, because Park National is a very high performing, great bank. And there's a lot of great bankers stuck in bad banks. And that's when I first saw it. I'm like, I got to go get the A player out of there so he can thrive, because he's smarter than me, would be successful if he had my job, but he's stuck over there.
Yeah.
And so what I love is seeing other people succeed and thrive, and having a culture, having a business where people can come and say, I can grow. Even if they stay with us for a time and not for a career, they can become a better version of themselves, and they can learn some of the things that we're able to offer. But seeing people succeed, we had a guy early in my career that was a developer for us, and now he works at the Pentagon. And
Very cool.
When he was working for us, he was making very little money right out of college. We're like, this guy's really smart. So we worked with him, and he got the confidence to apply, got the job, and it's just off and thriving. So they've had amazing careers, not necessarily with us, but what they learned, the confidence they got, the ability to become a different person, to grow into being a professional, and then go thrive wherever they're called to thrive.
The opportunity.
Yeah.
They had the opportunity with you.
That's why I do it.
Yeah.
Because I'm excited to see more people have more opportunity, as long as their model continues to grow and can win and have, a successful business. But the other thing is to make a difference, because at the end of the day, I want to make sure we're making a difference in the community, and that we're making the world a better place. So one of my favorite recent phrases is more RevLocal is good for the world.
Yeah.
So why? It's good for the world if people figure out how to do digital marketing, meaning they're going to survive. Because if they don't, they're probably not. It's a shift, and never more clear than the last 12 months. You better know how to do digital, or there's going to be a day where your competition is passing you by, because other people are doing things online, finding things online. And that's where people are. It's where their eyes are. It's where their habits are. So you got to figure it out. And so more of us doing that for people, helping them with that, getting better at it ourselves, is good for the world. But it's also good for the world if what we are about is to lend a helping hand, and to not be so selfish that we're just worried about ourselves, but that we're also worried about supporting the community. And that's where the RevLocal Cares came about, where we created our own fund so everyone at our company could have a hand in what do they care about, what do they want to support. When we did that, our giving from our employees tripled, because they realized this is about what we can do together, because we're stronger together than we are individually. And many people have heard that, but that's what we want to make real, and make sure we continue to leave a good leave a good stamp on the world and make it better for everyone.
Well, you're giving them an opportunity to actually have an action, not just talk the words, but an action, which is awesome. And then my last question, what is your biggest life hack?
That's a good one. I love that phrase. We talk about sales hacks, life hacks. I would say making sure that you have balance. For me, the life hack is, when you're trying to succeed, you actually succeed more. When I've learned this more as I've gotten older, the more balanced you are. Because if you're not paying attention to mental, physical, spiritual, and your family as much as your job, that imbalance will eventually take you down. And so the life hack for me is, I like to start on a regular basis with a white refresh of goals. So some people start every January trying to reset. I try to do it monthly or every couple months. What needs to change? And have those conversations with people at work, and with my wife of 25 years now. I realize when you said 20, 25 years this year. So how do we do a good job? And so one of the things we recently did is we started to have a few nights together with a marriage enrichment thing. So taking the time and the commitment to put aside other things and stop doing things and start doing things, because the seasons change and we don't change.
That's so true. And
I think that's, I'm over 50 now, and I got a granddaughter. So how do I prioritize differently today, which it sometimes shifts on you quickly. We all felt that quick shift, but if we do a better job, the life hack is reset your goals constantly and prepare yourself. And the way you do that is retreat.
Yeah.
And so sometimes if, for me going down to Hocking Hills, I started doing that 3 or 4 years ago, that's my getaway. And now we tend to try to get away in other places where we can have 3 or 4 days to reset, recharge. And I'm so much more productive and so much more fulfilled having had those things to lean on, that time away to lean on, and keeping things in balance in that way.
I'm so glad that you said that, because you validate everything that I've been thinking and feeling lately, and it's okay to retreat and make sure you take that time. So thanks for saying that.
Well, it's one of the blessings of people working from home in
Yeah.
COVID is they've gotten a little bit more of a chance. That's the positive side of it.
Yeah.
They might have missed some of their collaboration with people, but yeah, to me, we don't give ourselves permission to do that enough. Our cultures
Agreed.
demand the 9 to 5 and some places 7 to 7. And in reality, if you can balance a little bit more and communicate with each other so that it's part of your battery recharging, then we can stay on higher octane longer.
Yep. It'll push you 2 steps forward, right?
That's right.
Well, so thank you so much. That's all the time we have today. I mean, I could talk for hours, but I guess I'll stop.
Well, Jamie, thank you for having me. Thank you for putting together this podcast.
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
really exciting.
We're having so much fun with it. Like we said, fun. It's so appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
Good. So join us next month. We have James Golden on, and he's going to talk about imposter syndrome. And I think that that's super relevant, not only to business, but to our personal lives. So be sure to join us next month. And until next time, you guys, thanks for joining us on For the Love of Licking County. Stay safe.